Welcome to Goodyear Brakes Online. Today we're going to show you exactly how to replace and install calipers, rotors, and brake pads with quality Goodyear brake parts using a full Goodyear brake kit. A couple of quick things before we begin. We're going to show you the key steps while changing your brakes on a typical passenger vehicle. Now, it's important to refer, though, to the brakes section in your vehicle's manual, just in case there's some instructions specific to your vehicle. Also, whenever I do brakes, I prefer to purchase the entire bundle or brake kit simply because I know I'm getting all the parts I need and the end result will be a completely safe set of brakes. So let's get started. At Goodyear Brakes, we have made it our life's work to keep driving as safe as possible. It's true when replacing your brakes as well. Step 1. Make sure you have safety glasses and a good pair of work gloves. Now, Mechanics Wear makes a good quality pair of gloves you can pick up at pretty much any hardware outlet. Next, before we begin, you're going to need some important tools to get the job done correctly. So first, you're going to need a car jack, jack stands, a breaker bar, a ratchet, wrench, and socket set, a torque wrench, a flathead screwdriver, a brake caliper compression tool, brake cleaner, anti-seize lubricant, a bungee cord, some rags, an oil catch pan, a bleeder bottle and tube, brake fluid, silicone brake grease, thread locker, heavy hammer, and metal brush. Each of these items can be purchased at any quality hardware or auto parts store. We provided links to every tool to allow you to research them online. Or you can do what I do and borrow the tools you don't have from a friend. All right, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is loosen the lug nuts on the front wheel. Now you use your breaker bar and the appropriate socket and a little bit of muscle to break these loose. Once you've got all the lug nuts loose, what you're going to do is take the wheel chock here and put it behind the rear tire. So what happens when you jack the car up, you won't have an issue of the car rolling back on you. It's an added safety device. Now, once the car's up in the air and it's stable, you're going to put some jack stands underneath, make sure that they're put in the proper spot. Now, if you're not positive where the jack stands go, simply refer to your car or truck manual, and it'll instruct you exactly where to place each jack stand. Okay, I like to have all my parts laid out, the calipers, the pads, the rotors, and all the necessary tools to get the job done. This way it speeds up the process. Next, remove the tire. Go ahead and turn the wheel so you have free and easy access to your brake assembly. Here you can clearly see the brake caliper and the rotor. Next, we must remove the caliper from the knuckle. We're going to remove this banjo bolt, which allows the brake fluid to flow into the caliper. We'll loosen this with our socket wrench. When you loosen the banjo bolt, brake fluid will naturally flow into your catch pan like this. Next, we remove the caliper bracket bolts that connect the caliper bracket to the knuckle by first removing the lower bolt, then the upper bolt. This is where you'll need to use your breaker bar to loosen those bolts. The breaker bar just gives you that little extra leverage you need to remove each bolt. Next, use your ratchet to remove the bolts entirely. Now you can carefully remove the caliper. Unscrew the brake line to completely remove the old caliper like this. Okay, you can now see the old rotor. You might need a heavy hammer to help loosen up the rotor from the hub. But in this case, we are in luck because the rotor just fell right off. So grab yourself a metal brush and some brake clean because now you're going to do some dirty work. It's imperative that you get all the grease and dirt off of the hub itself. All that rust here has to come off because you need a flat surface for the new rotor to ride on. We want to ensure the rotor runs true to prevent any vibration. Okay, now it's time to grab our new Goodyear rotor and install it. But before we do that, we want to clean it with some brake clean and a microfiber towel. The goal here is to remove any of that oil protectant that comes on from shipping from the manufacturer. There we go, looks pretty good. Now it's time to put the new rotor on. And we'll set it in place like that, and we'll use a couple of the lug nuts we've got to kind of hold it in place until we get the new caliper ready to put back on itself. At this time, we're going to install the new Goodyear caliper, which has an amazing proprietary coating called Antiox Max. It protects it against rust and corrosion. Let's take the bolts and clean them with a wire brush and coat them with a little thread locker like this. It'll give us a good tight fit and prevent the bolts from backing out. Now it's time to put in the new caliper. So it'll go into place like this. We'll install our bolts, both top and bottom. So now that I've got the bolts started, we're going to use a ratchet to snug them down. All right, so that one's good. And all right, so we've snugged up our bolts with our ratchet. Now it's time to switch to the torque wrench. Now, what you want to do is make sure you torque the bolts to the proper spec for your vehicle. Be sure to reference a brake torque specification guide when doing this final tightening. All right, looks good. Now we reattach the brake line to the new caliper. It'll go in just like this. So what we do is we take our new banjo bolt and install the new copper washers. Be sure to check that there are no old washers that are still attached. So they go on like this, go through here on the back side, and screw into place. The washers prevent leaks in the brake line, so make sure the banjo bolt is tightened to the correct torque spec. Next, go ahead and top off the master cylinder with some brake fluid until it's at the fill line. Okay, let's put the new brake pads in. So now we have to take out our caliper bolts, both top and bottom. Then we'll take the caliper itself and rest it up on top. You never want to let the caliper hang from the brake hose or line. It'll damage it. So once we've got it rested securely out of the way, we'll put in our pads and our clips. The clips click in just like your original caliper. They're really important because they help prevent vibration. The brake pads go in with the springs at the top. Now you can put each of the brake pads into place. We're going to lightly apply a little grease to the back of the pads between the pads and the calipers. Now replace the caliper and the bolts and tighten it down with your ratchet. Next, we have to gravity bleed the brake system. So let's locate the banjo bolt. Look above it and you'll see this bleeder valve. To gravity bleed, we just open the valve using the box end wrench. The brake fluid will fill the cylinder, which runs down from the master cylinder. Once the valve leaks, we'll close it up and bleed it. Once it bleeds, we'll close it off and wipe off any residual brake fluid. Open your brake fluid reservoir and fill it back up with brake fluid to the fill line. Okay, the front brakes are complete. Now it's time to shift our focus to the rear. As you would imagine, the removal and replacement process of the brakes is very similar to what we did up front. In order to replace the calipers, rotors, and brake pads, we must remove the caliper and prepare the surface of the hub. The new Goodyear brake caliper comes with new brackets attached for ease of installation. This allows us to easily remove the entire bracket and caliper assembly in a few simple steps. We're going to loosen the banjo bolt with our socket wrench. Then we'll use our breaker bar to remove the two bolts that attach the caliper bracket to the knuckle. This allows us to remove the entire brake assembly at one time. Now we can completely remove this banjo bolt, which will allow the brake fluid to flow into our catch pan. Lift the complete assembly off like this. Okay, you can now see the old rotor. You might need a heavy hammer to help loosen the rotor from the hub. Grab a wire brush and some brake cleaner to clean all the dirt and grime off the hub. This creates a clean and flat surface for the rotor to rest. We want to ensure the rotor runs true to prevent any vibration. Okay, let's grab our new Goodyear rotor and clean it off with some brake cleaner using our microfiber towel. We will put the new rotor on the hub like this and screw a couple of lug nuts on to hold the rotor in place while we put the new caliper back into place. At this time, we're going to install the new Goodyear caliper, which has an amazing proprietary coating called Anti-Ox Max to protect against rust and corrosion. Let's take the bolts we just removed and clean and coat them with a good thread locker like this. This just gives us a good tight fit. Now attach the new caliper bracket to the knuckle and install our top and bottom bolts like this. Then we'll snug up the bolts with our ratchet. Then using our torque wrench, tighten the bolts to the proper torque specs for your vehicle. Be sure to reference the brake torque specification guide when doing this final tightening. Okay, let's put the new brake pads in. So now we have to take out our caliper bolts from the bottom and the top. Once we get them off, we'll take the caliper itself, lay it on top, and use it as a resting point so we can put in our pads and clips. All Goodyear brake pads are custom formulated to fit your car or truck, so be sure to use our Brake Finder search tool on the website when selecting your brakes. In this case, we have a wear indicator which should be placed on the inside pad in the down position. The wear indicator alerts the driver to change their brake pads by making a squeaking noise. Now you can put each of the brake pads into place. We're going to lightly apply a little grease to the back of the pads between the pads and the calipers. Then replace the caliper and tighten it down with your ratchet. Then use your torque wrench to tighten to the manufacturer's torque specifications. Now we must reattach our brake line to the new caliper like this. Take your new banjo bolt and install the new copper washers. Be sure to check that there are no old washers still attached, like this one. The washers prevent leaks in the brake line, so make sure the banjo bolt is tightened to the correct torque spec. Next, go ahead and top off the master cylinder with some brake fluid until it is at the fill line. Next, we have to gravity bleed the brake system. So let's locate the banjo bolt. Look above it and you will see this bleeder valve. To gravity bleed, we just open the valve using the box end wrench. The brake fluid will fill the cylinder, which runs down from the master cylinder. Once the valve leaks, we will close it up and bleed it. Once it bleeds, we will close it off and wipe off any residual brake fluid. Then open your brake fluid reservoir and fill it back up with brake fluid to the fill line. The final step is taking our new Goodyear brakes out to seat the new brake pads. Break-in, bedding in, and burnishing are different terms for the same thing. These terms refer to the process of conditioning new disc brake pads and rotors. The following steps are recommended to achieve optimum performance and life out of your new pads. Perform 15 stops from 35 to 40 miles per hour down to 5 miles per hour. Allow the brakes to cool for 30 seconds between stops. Try to avoid panic stops or hard braking for approximately 200 miles. The benefits of proper brake-in are reduces noise and vibration, improves performance, and eliminates glazing, which causes noise and reduces effectiveness. So, there it is, the installation of premium quality Goodyear calipers, rotors, and pads. With a little practice and the Goodyear tutorial video, everyone can take advantage of Goodyear's safety, performance, and durability.